The wind swept across the open fields, carrying with it the smell of sun-warmed hay and fresh soil. Out here, on the edge of Clearwater County, time moved a little slower, and I liked it that way. My name's Roy Hensley, 62 years old, third-generation cattle rancher, and proud owner of the last working ranch in the valley. That ranch had been in my family since 1954. My daddy bought it after the war, carved a life from the land, and passed it down to me. I raised my boy here, taught him how to drive a stick shift before he was tall enough to reach the pedals. Every inch of this soil carried memory, legacy, which is why it burned like fire in my gut to watch what had sprung up on the southern edge of my pasture. A year ago, a development company bought 30 acres I'd sold off to pay for my late wife's cancer treatments. I thought I was selling land. What I really did was open a vein. They built Rosewood Estates, a gated community with white fences, solar-paneled rooftops, and a homeowners association that treated bylaws like gospel, and their self-appointed messiah, Karen Whitmore. She moved in 6 months back, driving a spotless BMW and hauling enough entitlement to fill a freight train. The HOA elected her president within the first 2 weeks. No surprise there. Karen had a talent for turning friendly potlucks into parliamentary debates. The first time we met, I was tending to a calf-born breech the night before. She came striding across my driveway like she owned the gravel under her shoes, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. "Mr. Hensley," she said, nose wrinkling at the sight of mud on my boots. "We need to discuss your fencing. It doesn't conform to Rosewood's aesthetic standard. My fencing's been here since before you were born," I said, gently brushing straw off my sleeves. "That may be, but your property abuts our subdivision. The HOA feels—" "I'm not part of your HOA," I cut in. "Never signed anything, never agreed to be." She smiled like I just failed a test. "Oh, but you will. We're working with the county to bring the surrounding properties under our purview. For uniformity." I didn't say anything, just looked at her. Really looked. Karen was the kind of woman who thought community meant control, and I don't take well to being controlled. That was the start. Over the next few weeks, she made it her mission to break me in like a new pup. I received 3 courtesy notices in the mail, each printed on rosewood letterhead and brimming with passive-aggressive phrasing. Complaints ranged from excessive tractor noise to livestock-related odors. She even accused me of visual pollution, citing the unsightly clutter of my hay bales. It escalated quickly. One morning, I found a metal sign bolted to my private gate. HOA maintenance access only. No trespassing without approval. My land. My gate. I tore the sign off and tossed it into the bed of my truck. That afternoon, I parked right outside Rosewood's miniature clubhouse, a converted trailer they treated like the Capitol building, and walked in, boots thudding on the cheap laminate flooring. Karen was behind a faux marble desk, tapping away at her laptop. She didn't even look up. "Leave the sign," she said coolly. "You're welcome to file an appeal through our online portal." I leaned forward, voice quiet. "You so much as step on my property again without my say-so, and we're going to have a different kind of discussion." She smiled like I'd just confirmed everything she believed about rural aggression. "Oh, Mr. Hensley, you really should learn to adapt. This isn't the Wild West anymore. Maybe not, but out here, we still respect boundaries." By week's end, she began walking her little dog Toto, a jittery thing that barked at dandelions, right along my fence line. Once, I caught her filming my grandson, Tyler, who was visiting with his service dog. The look on her face wasn't curiosity, it was calculation. That evening, as I watched the sun dip behind the ridge, casting long shadows over my land. I knew this wasn't going to end with letters and polite warnings. Karen didn't want peace. She wanted a conquest. She thought the HOA gave her the power to push me off my land. What she didn't know was that my roots here ran deeper than her concrete footings. And my son, Deputy Luke Hensley, of the Clearwater County Sheriff's Department, wasn't just a rancher's boy. He was law, and soon, Karen was going to find that out the hard way. It was a Tuesday morning when Karen crossed the line from nuisance to outright threat and was working on the north field, patching a section of the fence that a couple of calves had nudged loose overnight. Sun beat down on my shoulders. Dust kicked. Up with every post, I drove into the ground. It was honest work, the kind that left your body sore and your mind clean. I'd just finished tightening the wire when I saw her. Karen stood just beyond the property line, arms crossed, lips pursed, like she'd sucked a lemon. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and a pastel jogging suit, her little rat dog yapping at her feet. Her phone was already up, pointed at me like a weapon. I wiped my brow with the back of my glove and stared her down. "You lost, Karen? You're trespassing," she snapped. "On my own damn land." She held up a stack of papers. HOA documents, no doubt. The association voted to rezone this pasture. It's now designated as shared green space. You no longer have exclusive use rights. I let out a dry chuckle. Zoning laws don't work like that. You can't vote my land out from under me. Oh, but we can. We've submitted the petition to the county board. You can petition all you want until the county says otherwise. This pasture is mine. Karen's expression twisted into something cruel. She lowered her phone, fingers dancing across the screen. "You leave me no choice, Mr. Hensley." I didn't say a word, just watched as she dialed 911. "Yes, hello," she said sweetly. "I'd like to report a trespasser, an aggressive man on private community property. He's armed and refusing to leave." I stiffened. That was a lie, and a dangerous one. I carry a utility knife on my belt, same one I've used to cut rope for decades. But armed meant something different. When you set it to emergency dispatch, it meant escalation. It meant sirens. It meant trouble. Karen was still watching me, smirking now, like she'd finally figured out how to win. "I'm afraid for my safety," she continued into the phone. "Yes, he looks volatile. Please send someone right away." She ended the call with a satisfied nod and turned to leave. I stood there, stunned for a moment, then grabbed my phone and called the one person I trusted to handle this without someone getting hurt, my son. Luke picked up on the first ring. "Dad, you okay?" "I think you're about to get a call from dispatch," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "HOA, Karen just phoned in a false report. Said I'm trespassing and armed." "Jesus," he muttered. "Stay put. I'll handle it." Luke's always been level-headed. Even as a kid, he didn't rush to anger like I did. That's probably what made him a good deputy. While I was a man of gut reactions, Luke was a man of protocol, but he never tolerated bullies, especially ones who thought the law was a tool they could twist. 20 minutes later, I heard the familiar crunch of gravel as a sheriff's cruiser pulled onto the property. The tires rolled slow and deliberate, kicking up dust in the heat haze. The door opened, and there he was, Deputy Luke Hensley, badge on his chest, aviators shading his eyes. He gave me a quick nod as he stepped out, calm, professional. But his jaw was clenched. Karen came power walking up the road from her house, clutching a manila folder like it was a sword. "Officer," she called. "Thank goodness, he's still here." Luke turned to her slowly. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to explain exactly what you reported." She launched into her speech. "This man, Roy Hensley, is endangering the community. He's refused multiple warnings, and now he's encroaching on protected HOA land. He had a blade in his hand, looked like a weapon, and he was behaving aggressively. I feared for my life." Luke listened silently, no expression. When she finished, he glanced at me. "Dad," he said, voice even, "did you threaten her?" "No, sir," I said, just as plain. "I was mending fence, on our land." Luke stepped forward, gaze hardening. "Ma'am, this property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. You filed a false emergency report and claimed someone was armed and aggressive. Do you realize what that could have led to?" Karen blinked, surprised. "Well, I just assumed." "You don't get to assume when calling 911. Luke said firmly. "You lied to dispatch. That's a criminal offense." The color drained from her face. "We're not done here," Luke said, "but I'd recommend you head back home and get a lawyer. Fast." Karen didn't speak. She just turned, less brisk now, and walked away, suddenly aware of how fragile her footing had become. As she disappeared down the road, Luke sighed and looked at me. "She picked the wrong ranch," he muttered. I nodded. "And the wrong family." By the next morning, word of Karen's false 911 call had spread like wildfire through Rosewood Estates. Turns out, she wasn't as universally beloved as she imagined. A few of her neighbors, especially the ones who'd lived near the edge of the subdivision, closer to my property, had been quietly fed up for months. Karen's crusade against rural disturbances hadn't stopped with me. She'd fined one man for flying an American flag outside of regulation mounting height, and another for planting tulips in an unapproved color scheme. Now that she'd weaponized emergency services against a long-standing rancher and got caught red-handed, they started talking, loudly. Luke filed an official report, while the sheriff's office couldn't arrest her without the DA's review. The complaint was public record. She was under investigation for misuse of emergency resources, filing a false police report, and potentially inciting a dangerous response. I didn't need her behind bars. I just needed her off my back. But Luke made it clear. "We're going to do this the right way. No shortcuts." That's when Karen did what bullies always do when cornered. She doubled down. The following week, I got a cease and desist letter from a law firm in town, claiming I'd created a hostile environment for Rosewood residents and was obstructing community zoning initiatives. It was printed on thick ivory paper with a gold letterhead logo, the kind meant to intimidate by weight alone. I took it straight to Luke. "This hold any water?" I asked, sliding the letter across his kitchen table. He read it, eyebrows raised, then snorted. "It's bluff. HOA bylaws don't override county property lines, and since you never opted into their charter, they have no legal jurisdiction." I leaned back, exhaling through my nose. "So, what now?" Luke tapped his fingers on the table. "We fight back, legally, but smart. You've got every document from Grandpa's original deed, right?" I nodded. "Everyone. Bound in leather and locked in my gun safe." That night, we went through them, line by line. We cross-referenced property lines, easements, and even the dusty plat maps from the 1950s. And there it was, in clear legal language, an easement boundary that bisected the southern edge of my land. Karen's HOA had encroached 6 feet past the line with a decorative brick wall they'd built last spring. She was so busy trying to redraw my map, she hadn't realized she'd overstepped her own. Luke grinned when he saw it. "Want to make some noise?" The next day, I called the county zoning office and scheduled a land use inspection. I invited a local agricultural advocate who'd worked with other landowners battling overzealous HOAs. I even called in a favor from a local reporter who owed me for tipping him off about a cattle theft ring last year. By Friday morning, my driveway was lined with 3 pickup trucks, 2 sedans, and 1 news van. Karen stormed over, flustered and furious. "What is the meaning of this circus?" she hissed. I gave her a polite smile. "Just having some guests over. You know how neighborly we ranch folk are." When the zoning officer measured the wall, he frowned. "This encroachment's a problem. You're on private land, ma'am." Karen's face paled. "That's impossible. Our developer assured us the wall was within community boundaries." "Then your developer lied." The inspector replied curtly. "You'll need to remove it or face fines." The reporter's camera clicked like a woodpecker on espresso. Karen tried to spin it, tried to explain away the violation, but the damage was done. The HOA board met that night, and from what I heard through the grapevine, the mood was mutinous. 3 board members resigned within the week. The HOA's lawyer withdrew representation, citing misrepresented facts in Karen's complaint filings, and the county began formally reviewing her 911 call, with Luke's report as a key piece of evidence. But the cherry on top, one of her former allies, an older gentleman named Mr. Walsh, approached me 2 days later, hat in hand. "Roy," he said, "I never liked the way she handled things. We'd like to work with you directly now. No more HOA nonsense, just neighbor to neighbor." I shook his hand. That's all I ever wanted. As Karen watched from behind her curtains, the power she once held crumbled like dry clay. But I wasn't done. Not yet. She tried to use the law to bully me off my land. Now I was going to use the law to make her finally understand. Out here, roots matter. Legacy matters. And some fences can't be moved. Not by force. Not by lies. And sure as hell, not by clipboard diplomacy. The following month brought a different kind of quiet to the ranch. One that felt earned. For the first time in a long while, I could mend a fence post without glancing over my shoulder. No HOA spies parked across the road. No passive-aggressive notes tucked under my gate. Just the sound of wind through the mesquites and the low grumble of cattle in the distance. But the final chapter hadn't yet been written. Not until Karen answered for the chaos she'd caused. The county board formally concluded its investigation into her 911 call. Luke didn't share details while the case was open, but when the decision came through, it echoed across Rosewood Estates like thunder. Karen was charged with false reporting to emergency services, public mischief, and attempted civil harassment. By misrepresentation, none were felonies, but they painted a clear enough picture of her intent. And they came with a hefty fine and court-mandated community service. I wasn't interested in vengeance. I was interested in closure. And that came on a Thursday morning, in the unlikeliest of settings, a folding chair in a town hall auditorium, where Karen was forced to address the very community she tried to rule with an iron binder. She stood stiffly at the podium, eyes darting across the faces in the crowd. Most looked away. A few glared openly. Her voice was tight when she spoke. "I regret that my actions led to unnecessary tension and distress," she read from a prepared statement. "It was never my intention to misuse public resources. I misunderstood jurisdictional boundaries, and for that, I apologize. It wasn't heartfelt, but it was public. And for someone like Karen, that was worse than jail time." After the hearing, I stepped outside to where Luke waited. Arms crossed, an expression unreadable. "You think she learned anything?" I asked. He shook his head. "Maybe, maybe not." But the rest of them did. Sure enough, the HOA board was in shambles. The new leadership quietly began revising their charter. Enforcement overreach was scaled back. Mandatory dues were paused pending review. More importantly, the notion of trying to annex land outside HOA boundaries was buried for good. I decided to mark the occasion in my own way. The southern pasture, the same one Karen had tried to seize, had long been nothing more than a grazing lot, but it held history. My father taught me to ride there. My son learned to rope there. So I called up a local metalworker and commissioned something bold. 3 weeks later, a black iron arch stood tall over the southern entrance. Welded into its crossbeam in proud block letters, Hensley Ranch, EST. 1948, beneath it, I planted a pair of Texas red oaks. One for me, one for Luke. The first time Karen saw it, she stopped mid-jog, lips parted in disbelief. The ranch's name was visible from the main road. Permanent, unapologetic. She turned and walked the other way without saying a word. That was the last time I ever saw her on my property. Luke dropped by that evening, still in uniform but carrying a six-pack and wearing a rare grin. "You sure that arch isn't overkill?" he teased. "Nah," I said, cracking a beer. "Just drawing a proper boundary." We sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, watching the land settle into dusk. Crickets chirped. Coyotes howled far off near the tree line. All the sounds of home. "You know," I said. "She called the law thinking she could control it. But it was you who showed up. That irony still makes me laugh." Luke chuckled. Justice has a funny way of circling back. I looked at him, my son, my protector, my legacy, and I realized something. Karen may have had titles, bylaws, and signatures, but I had roots. I had history. And more than anything, I had family who believed in something bigger than rules on a page. The HOA hadn't just lost the fight. They'd exposed their own rot, and in doing so, they made space for something better, something real. So I raised my beer, tapped it lightly against his. "To fences that hold," I said. "To legacies that last," he replied. And as the stars blinked to life above the ranch, I knew one truth for certain. This land wasn't just mine by deed. It was mine by blood, by sweat, by every storm weathered and every battle fought. And no HOA clipboard warrior would ever take that away again.